Hey there, good morning. This is Chief RBC. Guys, we're going to be talking quickly about how to create a tileable texture within Photoshop. Now, I've gone online real quick and I just grabbed a quick texture that I could find. I make no claim to have built this texture, nor do I sell it, nor do if I knew who it was, I would give credit to the person. So hopefully somebody sees this and they know who it is, let me know, and I will be happy to give credit to them. Anyway, we're just using this as an example. Right off the bat, if you want to tile a texture like this, now this comes off as already a tileable texture, but really it's not. We're going to come up here to our filter settings, come down to other and high pass, or not high pass, but offset. And as we set it to offset, this is a 2048, we're going to set it to 1024 by 1024, and we're going to hit OK. If you come inside here, you can notice that there is a visible seam running down the middle of this texture. And because it's causing, that little thing right there, if we start to tile this, you also look here in the black and you can see that there's a lot of actual physical, you know, texture space inside there. And we want to make sure that we clean that up. And the best way to clean that up is a combination of using our blend tool, in which we just come in here and we can blend it together, and also come inside here with our clone stamp tool and make sure that when you're using the clone stamp you have it set down to around 50. That way you're not going to do a lot of damage to it and stuff, and you can kind of get a nice clean cleanup right there. Now we want to make sure that we clean up all of this before we tile it any further. So I'm going to pause for a moment and get that cleaned. Okay, now that I've cleaned it up, we're going to go in here and we're going to do our test once again. We're going to offset, and now because we've used the offset once, those same settings will already be set up here, so we can hit offset. And as we look at this, we can tell there's no visible seams. Everything seems to be nice and cleaned up. The next thing we're going to do is we need to get a nice normal map off of this. And a lot of you guys probably aren't familiar with XNormal. If you are, you can actually put in the XNormal plugin into your Photoshop, and it works really well. But before you do, I want you to we're going to duplicate off this layer, and we're going to come down here to our image adjustments, hue and saturation. I want you to make sure that you drop that all the way down, just because we want a black and white image when we come inside here to our X normal, and we're going to hit normal to occlusion right there, or sorry, undo. Sorry, let me explain that a little bit. Height to normals. I want to, by the way, duplicate this off a couple of times. We're going to start with the first one, and we're going to go X normal, height to normals. Now, in the X normal plugin, um, they kind of started off at about 300. If you drop the number lower and hit update, you get more bump into it, but it doesn't look as nice. So if you go higher, it smooths it out a little bit more. I like to keep it roughly about 300 and update that and hit continue, and we get a tileable normal map. Okay, from that. Our other one, we're going to come down here and go filter, other, or sorry, X normal, and we're going to use this height to create an occlusion map. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit that. Make sure, you can change your radius and it smooths it out. If you hit update, you kind of get an idea. It gets sharper. If we go higher, it gets a little blurrier, but you want to be careful that you don't blur too much, because you can see that what happens up here is it's going to take your tileable texture and it's going to just totally crap it out. So I'm going to head back down to around 8 and hit update, and we're going to hit continue from there, and that gives us a nice ambient occlusion that we can work with. Okay, from here, if you want to, you can pull out your metallic and roughness out of the channels right here if you want to. Typically, you can use the green channel that will allow you to get a nice, um, you know, metallic and roughness. You just want to make sure that they're turned down and turned up the way it is. But for right now, we're not going to do that. We're just going to go ahead and export these textures out and use them inside of Unity. I'll be right back. Okay, now that we're inside of Unity, going to go ahead and drag in my ambient occlusion to make sure that we've got all the textures that we want. And as you can see down here, I've got my rock wall and this one, so let's go ahead and pull in that ambient occlusion. Okay, with all three textures in, I'm going to go ahead and apply a material to this. We're going to call that material walls. And we're just going to go ahead and drop in our rock wall into the albedo. We want to make sure that our normal map settings are on here, that this texture is set to normal map for our normal map, and before we go and drop it on. And if you look right here, we're going to just kind of see what happens here when we drop that right here. right, looks like a beautiful normal. And we're going to go ahead and drop in our ambient occlusion right here under the occlusion. And if we kind of turn that up and down, you can kind of see that it gives us a lot. You can increase those things if you want to. And what we're going to do is we're just going to set a roughness and metallic maybe about right there. I want to look down here. This is really what I'm looking at. About right there. There we go. And so as we look at our material coming around, now granted this is not laid out the way I want it to be, but that looks really nice right there. I'm actually pretty happy with that. Let me turn the light towards it a little bit and we can kind of see it. That is a beautiful looking texture right there. Okay, so right from the get-go, the first thing we want to do is come up and make sure that you're tiling your texture, because otherwise, what was the purpose in creating a tileable texture? So I'm going to set this to 2 and 2. Now make sure, whoops, sorry, not 2.5. Let's do that again. So if you look at this, no matter how much we tile it, it keeps getting, it looks pretty nice actually going through it. Now, as you start to tile more and more, obviously you're going to start seeing a repeating pattern in things and stuff like that. So you want to kind of avoid adding too much into your scenes where things are pushed in and out and stuff like that. For tileable textures, you want to try and make sure they're as even as possible. Now, if you look down here at secondary maps and stuff like that, this is where you can start separating out your details and stuff like that. You can drop in a secondary detail map over the top of your stuff. Now, a lot of you guys were running into issues where, hey man, my wall textures and my other textures were kind of having issues. If you notice right here, that's why they gave you secondary maps. So you can actually put inside of here a detail map that is kind of offset a little bit. Let me see if we can just drop something dumb in here. I'm going to just drop this inside here. You can kind of see that it gives us a little bit of a breakup here, and I can even retile this one. Let's do this one at 2 and 2. So you can see that you can start to create some really nice looking textures based off of this. Now granted, these are crap, but let's just say we did this at 5 and 5, and you can kind of get an idea. We're starting to break up that surface a little bit more. Now they're exactly the same. Let's do 10 and 10 right here. And we're starting to see actual lines coming through and stuff. So, you're going to get to a point where, yes, things start to get a little bit overboard, but this is how you create your tileable textures and stuff like that, and how you can really put some different details into stuff. Um, Not every single texture, just FYI, has to have a metallic and smoothness on it. You can pretty much do your stones and stuff like that without having any of those things on there. So just make sure. A couple of you are running into an issue where you started getting some really bright metallics and stuff like that. I keep my stones down into around the 0.14, 0.2. Keep your metallic roughly into the upper 8, And if you do this, you guys will start seeing a lot of difference in the way you do your textures and stuff like that. Because if you think about it from a standpoint of the way you've been doing things, you've been dropping things into Substance, and you guys have been, basically just trying to let Substance run everything. Well, you really don't have to do that. You can create a whole bunch of tileable textures that you can run around your entire scene and start dropping them in. So hopefully this helps you guys. I hope you enjoy it. Talk to you later.